Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back, everyone. This is your host speaking, Josh, and this is Star Wars Escape Pod. If you've never tuned into the show before, welcome to the show. We're a Star Wars podcast that chats Star Wars all the time, every week. And this week we are chatting about the 7th episode of The Bad Batch, Season 1, currently airing on Disney+. Now, this is the last episode that has trailer footage. If you've watched the Bad Batch Season 1 trailer, we don't know what comes after this episode, so it's going to be an interesting one to talk about. A lot of speculation involved. Blake and Bryce are returning to do just that. Let's get into it with them.
Another happy landing.
Welcome back, fellas.
Hello.
How are you all doing today?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, glad to be back, especially for this exciting episode. I'm sure it's been all the rage. Everyone talking over the weekend.
Yeah, it's an interesting episode, of course, because it's the last one of the season trailer that we had when they released the full size trailer on YouTube and whatever else. So from this point forward, we have no idea what's going to happen with the show. We don't know what the future episodes hold. And there's still another, another 9, 11, something odd episodes to go or something like that.
That's interesting. I didn't know actually that like up until now we've seen, stuff that was featured in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kept pretty close tabs on that. There's going to be 16 episodes. Last one airing on August 13th.
Oh wow!
Out of the 16 episodes, we're now 7 episodes in.
Yeah, basically halfway.
Basically halfway through, and we have no idea what's going to happen. I watched the trailer a couple times because I really wanted to kind of see like, hey, what's going to happen, what's going to show up, kind of thing. Where's this show going to go, right? And after watching it countless times, I'm convinced there's no more footage in that trailer that shows up now in the show. And because it's such a short season, I highly doubt we're going to get a mid-season trailer. Which I know it happens when there's like a year-long thing. Sometimes they do a mid-season trailer at like Christmas time or whatever.
And they do remodels and everything too.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that though. It's just going to be a very seamless transition through the next rest of the season, and we're going to finish up whatever story they're trying to tell. And from history, we can all vouch for the other animated shows in the sense that they get better as time goes by, right? Because the first season is always setting stuff up. I would say that's pretty consistent. I hesitated a second on Rebels, but I think that's true there as well. Yeah, I mean, it kind of tapers inwards or whatever the expression you want to use. But I find just after the first initial wave of whatever they're doing for a show, it tends to get a little better.
The storyline.
The storyline,
just gets more like intense.
As someone that wasn't quite aware of like, I didn't know that this is kind of like a pseudo like mid-season finale. Like it was pretty fitting. Like it feels like a page has been turned. Like now with this episode, like now that I've seen this.
No, right.
Yeah. We finally got to the conclusion of the whole Wrecker headache thing and everything. Yeah. And just to kind of recap exactly what episode we're talking about for anyone who's tuning into this later. This is season 1, episode 7. It's the episode called Battle Scars. And, just as a quick summary, the Bad Batch meets up with Rex actually finds them, and they end up going to a very familiar planet, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. And they're finally acknowledging the headship ordeal, and they're off on their own mission to get that sorted. So that's the episode we're gonna be chatting about. But let's just get right into Rex, because this dives in pretty quick with reintroducing his character in these shows.
Shows up and gone all so fast.
Yeah, I mean, he's here for.
Are you disappointed? You're like, no, don't leave.
I mean, Rex is such a big character to Clone Wars and stuff, and Bryce, you said something really funny when we were watching the episode, because we'd already seen it, and you were like, oh, now I see why you guys like the episode.
Yeah.
Is it? AJ brought something to my attention last week when we were chatting about the show, and he said something along the lines of how he wishes that less familiar characters kept showing up, because now almost every single episode we've had at least one, right? Is this something that bothers you as well, or is it something that you embrace wholeheartedly, being a sequel to Clone Wars? You just don't really care?
Well, you have to use it sparingly, right? Like I don't know, because the more you do it, every time you introduce a character that's seen before, the galaxy gets a little bit smaller, right?
Yeah.
So you have to, I think you got to be pretty wise with how many people you're throwing in,
right?
And how many new kind of characters you're introducing. But it was fitting to me. It didn't feel crazy.
Didn't feel out of place. Yeah.
And considering the story arc that happened, I know Josh, you and I had speculated very heavily this is exactly what was going to happen, and I don't know if I could really think of a lot of other ways for them to figure out how to deal with the chips.
Right. Yeah. And it's and as far as Rex goes, I mean, who's the guy who had to have it taken out in the first place? I mean, it really makes perfect sense as to why he would show up in the show again, right? To address the frequent appearances of familiar faces, I don't know, I'm half on board with it in the sense that Clone Wars was not, it was based around the main characters of the Skywalker saga, right? And that's kind of where I'm coming from as a Clone Wars sequel. Seeing these familiar faces, to me, it doesn't bother me too much. If as the story goes on a little further, though, I would like to see a little less of it, just because I'd like to get into these.
You don't want to see Vader with the new 501st super early into the Empire?
I mean, I can wait. I can wait another season or two for that to happen. It's more so far we've made it through half the season, and every single episode has had a familiar face, whether it be Kanan Jarrus or something, right?
True.
It's been at least one.
Yeah.
We had Fennec Shand. It's been every single episode.
Deserter clone.
Yeah, Cut Lawquane from Clone Wars Season 2. There's been a familiar returning Clone Wars cast member of some kind ever since the first episode, right? The Martez sisters and everything else. So, I mean, it doesn't bother me because this is a Clone Wars sequel. If you just take the, when we were watching Clone Wars Season 7, it's I'm not surprised that Bo-Katan shows up or whatever, because, it's Clone Wars. She's shown up before, and
at the same time, because it's funny because now you bring it up, I never even noticed that every episode is seeing someone.
Me too.
And I think it's because it's week to week, so you forget the last episode you saw someone again. But if
it
you
is
watch
every episode.
Yeah, if you watch them back to back, you're like, what the crap is going on? It's like they're kids playing in a playground. There's only 10 kids there.
Yeah, totally.
It's tough because it's almost counterproductive in the story they're trying to tell, where these characters should feel very alone.
Yeah.
But it's just they just keep running into their best friends.
It's true.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, even Saul Guerrero showed up very early on in the show, and as cool as it is to see some of these characters, I think I would like to move away from that now in the later half of this season and going forward. Hopefully they'll do that.
I'd hate to think this is the reason. Maybe they just didn't have the budget or the time to create new characters, modeling everything, casting.
Yeah, it must be really. I mean, this show, it's
I think it was a Rebels thing too, right? So because they were super budget tight.
Yeah. So for Rebels, I think which really in my opinion, it really it was at its best, I think, when it did bring in some of those familiar characters, because we all missed Clone Wars at the time, which was canceled, and Rebels really did it filled the gap in a way for some of these storylines that weren't able to finish completely, right? And so we got some cool stuff out of it. I mean, we had the stuff with Maul and Kenobi in the desert, and all the Ahsoka Vader stuff, and that was all really awesome, right? And I'm glad that I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't exchange that for anything. Of course, I would exchange that entire show to get the rest of Clone Wars, but that's just me. This is a Clone Wars sequel show, though, so I mean, I'm kind of expecting all these characters from Clone Wars to show up the way that they just did frequently in Clone Wars, except we are focused in on another set of main characters now, right?
Here's the thing,
so I'm kind of hoping it to be less frequent as it goes by.
Excluding Cutler Quaid, they're basically all characters that we saw in the final season of Clone Wars we got last fall, which means they were all new models, right? And they're all like freshly done up. So they saved all that time and money just using those same ones again.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. They did remodel Saw Gerrera, I noticed. And I think Tarkin had a once over, but yeah, most of them were the same. Like the Trace and Rafa, right out of season 7. Yeah. A lot of those characters, Rex, I'm sure we might have more. We had the first ever Fennec Shand show up in animation, which was cool. I actually liked that a lot. I feel like it was a bit of a marketing thing for Book of Boba Fett coming out later this year. Obviously, she's going to be a big part of that show as well. So maybe they were just trying to start her origin story of some kind. I don't really know.
I can see that.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in Star Wars right now. We got the War of the Bounty Hunters comic series kind of on the shelves and
is she in
coming
there?
out on a weekly basis. And no, but she's alive in that time. Yeah, I would not be surprised if she was. They just re-canonized Dirge in Star Wars and brought him into the series.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in there, and I highly doubt that she's not gonna. She'll be in there at some point. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of like going from point A to point.
Oh man, they're definitely gonna do a storyline where Boba and her meet, and that's how they know each other for when. I guess she helps him deal with his post Sarlacc deformation.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. Yeah, you never know, right? I mean, Django had Zam. Now Boba's got Fennec Shand. So it's like father, like son.
Bryce, you could probably point to this more, but the old books where like it was also Boba got out of the Sarlacc pit, but he was being nursed and brought back and helped by
Dengar.
And now Dengar has just been replaced with Fennec Shand.
Yeah, he wasn't cute enough.
It makes me wonder if characters like that will show up in Book of Boba Fett. And I mean, I know we're talking about Bad Batch this episode, but just to kind of touch up on this, there was some recent news that showed up online. I don't know if you guys read that headline or not, but Book of Boba Fett's been supposedly announced to also recover the story as to what happened after that Sarlacc pit incident.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Like where he's been ever since. Yeah.
Like flashbacks or something.
Yeah. Something like that. So it's going to be cool to see who shows up because, there's a 5-year gap we're talking about. So there could be a lot of familiar faces.
Shut up, Dengar.
Yeah.
Oh.
The best line from Bosk in the Clone Wars.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, lots of familiar faces in the show so far, and hoping to see less of them as we go forward. But it is cool though. I'm not slapping the show around by saying I don't like it at all. It's just it would be nice for them to do new stuff. One of the and the only reason why I say this is because I think when Clone Wars was at its best was when it was doing something new and something completely different, right? And like Mortis, right? Like it got weird and it got crazy. And I think that's where the animation shows shine, right? They add so much more to the lore in a lot of ways, and I think this show has a lot of potential for telling this transition of the Republic into the Empire, and it would be cool to kind of get back to that. And we've kind of been drifting away from that and the Crosshair storyline a little bit.
I think that's exactly where we're heading next now, though, because now they have proof of how they can get rid of the chips.
Now that the Empire's been notified that they're on Bracca,
that too.
It would be interesting to see if that news reaches Tarkin's ears and he sends Crosshair and the team after them. And then, maybe we'll finally get the pursuit of them for the rest of the show.
Yeah,
or something
honestly,
like that.
I've been really looking forward to that part of the story, so I'm kind of getting antsy for it, if I'm honest.
Yeah, do people like Crosshair? Like when you're like, oh, what's like your favorite member of the crew? Do people answer Crosshair?
Probably not.
At this point, I think people have forgotten that he was part of the crew at this point. I mean, he's just like, it's been half the show, and we haven't seen him since like the second episode, I think it was.
He's been replaced by Gonky.
Yeah.
That's right. Or Omega.
Yeah, I mean, I like him as a character though. I thought he was pretty cool, and they were going interesting places with his attitude, and he was just kind of the mysterious, sketchy one that they kind of had on the team, which they don't have anymore. And
it's always the sniper character. He's always like
the sniper character,
like loner dick.
Yeah, exactly. It's always the sniper's always the loner, grizzled, like Sev from Republic Commando.
Exactly.
I was gonna say it's kind of interesting how in Republic Commando, Sev is also the one that goes missing at the end, right?
That too.
Yeah. Exactly. So this was an interesting episode because it brought us back to Bracca, which is the planet that you start off in Jedi Fallen Order, dismantling massive starships and stuff from the, I forget what that job position is called, but there's a actual name for it.
Like a scrapper or whatever?
Scrapper, yes.
That's good. I was going to say dismantler, but I think it's a scrapper.
Yeah, I think it's a scrapper. So yeah, it's the Scrappers Guild or whatever. So it's cool. It's cool to see. There's it's cool to see this planet, because I always thought it was such a cool location for them to introduce in the first place in that game.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
it was awesome, right? Like, and the levels were amazing and so detailed, and to have a planet that's not a junk world like Raxus Prime, but to be like a graveyard, like a ship graveyard planet instead, like, kind of makes sense to have, right?
And,
like, it's
and the Empire has an excuse to say that they're recycling.
Yeah, recycling all the metal. Just sits there gathering rust, but
probably like poisoning all of the dirt and everything. But.
Yeah, it's really good because it reminds you that there is some sort of like a galactic economy. Like they got to reuse these ships, like what right?
Yeah,
like,
it's still good materials.
Yeah, it's something we do on Earth, right? Big wars are over, then there's these like surplus of all this military weaponry. Like what happens to it?
Yeah.
It's really cool. Like some of the imagery in Fallen Order, not to change the subject, but like was so cool to see like those big lasers like cutting these like ships in half. And
for sure.
So I really like that they brought Brackus back. That was a treat. Which is I think another reason why this episode's good is they keep giving like little tidbits and treats for the viewer.
Yeah, and when I said that this episode was good, right? Like, because you kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, Rex is in this one, that's why it's good. But I was actually, I actually think Rex is always cool to see, but I really like this episode because they finally, first and foremost, got to that plot line with Wrecker's headaches. They got to get these chips out of their head, right?
I mean,
first
we've
of all,
been
like
talking about that for weeks.
Yeah, for weeks. And finally, it's like, oh, thank goodness. Like, we finally get that. Secondly, I love the fact that we went back to Bracca. And it was just a very well-paced story. Like they start off, they're on a job. They come back. They completed a job in the first 2 minutes of the thing. And now they have to go on this personal journey. They meet like this character that they've had like a, pre-existing relationship with. And, they have their own challenge along the way. They got to face a monster of some kind, right? Like it just felt very Star Wars to me. Yeah, it just felt very Star Wars to me in terms of story pacing, and that's also a reason why I liked it a lot. Visuals were great. I mean, one of you guys commented on all the map paintings in the background and the scenery.
It was well done. It's really cool, and they did really good ambiance as well when Wrecker like turned on them.
Man, that's what I was gonna say. Whoever, I don't know, like if there's different like showrunners for each episode, but the music felt very different. Like it was like the ambient like tones and like thrums felt very cool. And then like, did you notice the way that I feel like the lighting and like the mood and the camera angles changed when Wrecker like turned evil? I thought that was really well done. Something that I think set this episode apart from like a lot of the other stuff, which felt just kind of like your standard, episode.
Yeah, that's a great point. They did a really, really good job on the cinematography of this one when
like it made Wrecker feel really scary.
Yeah, it did.
Because like he is like super strong too, right? So it's like
you have
scary.
that
Get away from him.
Yeah, you have that. What's the Here's Johnny movie?
Shining.
Yeah,
Johnny
The Shining.
Bravo. You have the Shining moment where he's like looking through the thing at Omega, like with these like crazy eyes. I don't know. I thought like that kind of stuff was good. Like it's like, oh man, he's no longer a good guy.
Right.
Here's Johnny.
So it was Saul Ruiz did this episode. He's the same director who did Aftermath, which was the very first episode of this show. And he also did Cornered, which was the same episode that Fennec showed up in, I believe, as well. So far, all his episodes have been pretty awesome, at least in my opinion. I've really enjoyed all his stuff so far. So he's a director to watch for sure. Who's
the other poor schmo that does all the episodes that you didn't like as much?
Other people, actually. They've it's funny on these animated shows, like it's the producers and the showrunners that kind of maintain constantly through the program, and then week to week there's usually a different guest director or something like that, or just a reoccurring director that has every 8th episode or 4th episode or whatever. But so far all his stuff has been some of the better episodes for sure. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see. Let's see. I don't know. Did you guys pick up on anything else in this episode that you kind of want to bring up?
I'd love to rant a little. I always love
go for it.
Got a couple of little rants. Mantel Mix. That's going to be at Galaxy's Edge.
For sure.
Yeah, you brought this up, and I wrote it down just in case you did want to talk about it. So I looked it up. It's not current, at least as far as I can tell. This is the first episode that it's ever showed up in. So give it like a month's time, and next time you go to Galaxy's Edge, I'm sure.
I think it'd make a great cereal.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mantel Mix by Kellogg's.
Disney likes their exclusives though, and all they have to do is just get like candy popcorn and relabel it. Like it's literally no effort.
Yeah, it's like, it looked to me like, if you guys have ever had that kettle corn, it looked like kettle corn popcorn with like some cranberry in the mix. Just so like some bread.
You get the candy flavored ones, and it'll come in like rainbow colors.
that stuff. Yeah, like the multicolored one. Yeah, it totally looked like that.
Pink elephant popcorn or Lucky Elephant or whatever the heck.
Yeah,
it's like it's like these pink candy. It's just different colors. That's why I think because they didn't really. It's not like some crazy like alien snack. It's like they're literally eating popcorn.
Yeah, it's just literally colored popcorn.
Right. Yeah, it's just red and gold.
Feels too planned. I think you were on something there. That seems like a Disney move. Or merchandising.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a special from Ord Mantell City, but I'm sure we'll be able to import it through Galaxy's Edge at some point in the future. That's a good one for sure.
I mean, we could jump the gun here and start selling it ourselves on the side, sell
just
on Amazon.
Beat to it.
Just rebag it.
Hey, we can check if it's like. Can we check if there's like a URL or if it's trademarked somewhere already? Maybe we can like make some money and just, patent it before they do.
Mentalmix.com.
Yeah, exactly.
Rant 2, not as big of a rant, but why was everything so rusted already in Brackus? It's not that long since
right.
Cool water, I assume.
It's a good point that you brought that up. Yeah, maybe the water, maybe it's like, I don't think it's acid rain because
such a minor thing to see, but I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I liked the backgrounds, but I thought they were a bit washed out, like a bit hard to.
Yeah,
everything was just kind of the same texture.
That's
all
true.
rusty.
Yeah, browns and grays. Really.
Yeah.
Still cool to see.
Bit of a difference from Fallen Order, where it's like blue and raining everywhere, right? Like different environmental lighting, I guess.
Which did you like better?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the, Raxus Prime and Raxus in general. Like, I guess those junk worlds, and even the one that we find Maul on, whatever the one that was, they're all very orangey. So, I think I might actually prefer how we see it in Fallen Order. It's like a different environment, right?
I thought so too.
But yeah, I mean, still cool to see the planet. But yeah, that's a good point for sure.
It's interesting though that we kind of see it. Like in this show, is you can definitely tell that there's going to be massive changes coming soon. Like it's too early after the war for them to bring everything in.
Yeah.
Like, because there's only really that one Republic cruiser and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, it must be a big planet. I mean, they should have everything there, like Trade Federation ships and
but I mean, in the game, right? It was super, super busy, right?
Yeah.
So is Cal Kestis working for the Empire or for the scrappers that own the planet?
It'd be the scrappers, I think, because I don't know if you noticed the throwaway line, but they called them the Scrappers Guild. So there's actually a guild of scrappers, I guess, run the planet.
Yeah.
So you got the Bounty Hunters Guild and the Scrappers Guild.
Don't be confused because the Bounty Hunters often scrap.
That's right.
Not that they're scrappy, but they're not scrappers.
There's a minor difference.
There's also the Miners Guild, right?
Right.
There's a mining guild, and I think it's the mining guild
Stonemasons.
that is though they eventually
Woodcutters
do get owned by the Empire at some point, because in Rebels there were some mining guild TIE fighters, I'm pretty sure. But I don't know.
TIE fighters.
There was a special kind of TIE fighter that showed up in Rebels, which was, I'm just looking it up here. It's like a yellow framed TIE fighter with like a half of the wing. There's like a big wedge taken out of it. So that it looks like a normal TIE fighter aside from this wedge portion missing. And it's yellow and black. So I don't know if you remember those from the show, but those were,
I think it's from the whale episode.
They
right?
represented the mining guild in the Empire, and I'm pretty sure they were just because the mining guild, I guess, was an extension of the Empire's, companies, I guess. So it's interesting to think maybe at some point that the Scrappers Guild could be, I guess, closely affiliated enough that they just get absorbed by the Empire in some way, shape, or form.
Maybe they'll get their own TIE fighter.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, this Bad Batch season, I think, takes place over the first year after the Purge and everything, and Fallen Order is about 5 years later.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a time gap between this show and that game. But it would be really cool to see Cal Kestis show up in this show. Like, I'd be fine with that.
He's got to show up somewhere, right?
I mean, I would love it. Like, see, that's a familiar face that I would want to have at any point in the show.
He'd be super young, though, wouldn't he?
5 years younger.
Yeah,
he would be pretty young. Yeah.
12?
So he'd be about 13, maybe.
Yeah. I do think, you know what? I think maybe Cal Kestis would be better utilized later. Yeah,
he's been trying to hide his powers for the longest time, so you might be right.
He's a bit of a wimp.
He wouldn't have any powers.
I was a little let down when we went to Bracca. I thought we'd see him there and he'd like wave at the camera or something.
I'm trying to think of other characters that could show up in this time period. I mean, like even characters that we haven't seen before. Do you have, Bryce? Do you have any?
We just talked about how we don't want to see any more characters that we know.
No, I know, but I'm just speculating as to, well, not completely gone, but I mean, when we do, there's got to be some purpose to it. But I mean, like, if there is any from even the expanded universe, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
that's a good
cameo.
one. Yeah, like that would be pretty cool. Like, can you think of any that would like that would kind of get you excited?
I don't know. I'll have to think about it for a little bit. Not off the top of my head.
I had this conversation with Blake last week in one of the episodes or something. I said to him, the one character that I would love to have brought back into canon, maybe utilized to some degree, would be Furious Olin.
Oh yeah, from that line of comics, right?
Yeah, he showed up a couple times in various places, but he was primarily in the Jedi Quest Scholastic book series. Right. And the the Last of the Jedi series as well. Yeah. That was a good, good run.
He now is in a similar role as Cal Kestis, though, kind of, yeah.
But he wasn't Anakin's number one adversary.
It's true.
Yeah, he was supposed to be kind of a rival of Anakin's back in the day, and then he never showed up in Clone Wars, right? I guess just the show just never went there, but it would make sense that he didn't show up because in the expanded universe, he was kicked out of the Jedi Order before the Clone Wars happened. He skipped that whole thing, and that's kind of the reason why he survived the Purge. So, kind of like Thrawn just showing up and being recanonized, like if there were to be any character that could make sense to reappear in this time period, that's kind of the one that I could think of. That'd be cool to see.
Oh, I know who I'd choose. I would love it if they did a quick Ben Quadraneros. Yeah, I feel like he'd really bring a lot to an episode of Bad Batch.
Amazing.
Is Ben Quadraneros still alive?
Sure, man. He's probably ruling the pod racing circuits now that Sebulba and Anakin are gone.
See, here's the thing about characters like that, right? Like, we don't know them well enough that it's like, oh yeah, I remember them. But they're still infrequent enough or even non-canon enough that they're characters I would still like to see brought into a show like this, and they would still be new, right?
It is pretty much just fan service.
Yeah, fan service or even just a new main character of some kind. Ben Quadraneros, maybe a cameo for sure.
I bring him up because I saw a meme the other day where it was Ben Solo wasn't named after Obi-Wan. Han Solo was just a huge fan of Ben Quadraneros.
In the races, yeah. That would make
that's a good sense. Racer.
That would be amazing. Oh my goodness. Or Kidster. Maybe we'll have Kidster show up.
That's who I was trying to think of. Yeah. I was going to say, I think last week I said Mara Jade, but I was going to change it to Kidster.
I changed my mind. It's Kidster.
See, that's Wizard Annie kid?
That's him. Yeah.
That's
that would be
Annie.
if he just showed up at Darth Vader's intervention. It's just like, you remember me, man? I was your friend. What happened?
What have you been up to for the last 15 years?
Yeah.
I think actually a really funny conversation, a good bit.
Yeah.
So, this episode I feel like went pretty well. It leaves on a bit of a cliffhanger too, with Empire being reported to, and they're still on Bracca. So, we very well might get more Bracca. I just want to take a moment. What do you guys think, speculating wise? What do you think is kind of coming at us in the next half season, kind of thing? Until the finale. What do you kind of want to see? What do you think we're gonna see?
Well, we're definitely going to see them somehow save Crosshair, and whether that's going to be at
another. You think he's going to be saved, or
I do absolutely.
Do you think we're going to have to? They're going to have to kill him off or something.
That would be a twist, but I feel like the means are already there to do it. And I think it's even going. I think what's going to happen is they're going to get him at Camino, and they're gonna get help from that droid, the same droid that helped Fives.
Okay.
Because they've already showed that droid in the season, and there's got to be a reason for that, right?
Which droid is this?
He's
It's
that.
like the hover droid, right?
Yeah, he was friends with Omega.
Okay.
In the first episode, they both kind of hide in that room. Or they both break into the Bad Batch's bedroom, whatever, and they get caught.
Yeah.
And she gets arrested for it.
Yeah.
Josh,
I don't know. Do you think they're... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, Josh, you're still thinking that Omega's going to come out as a Jedi?
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of torn on it because, like, on the one hand, I feel as if her force sensitivity is just, it's not that far away, kind of thing. You know, I think it's almost bound to happen at some point that they would potentially reveal something like that. It just seems like it could be a thing.
I think so as well.
Yeah. I read a really interesting theory online the other day. So maybe we shouldn't share other people's theories, but they pointed out that could have been. It's funny because everything always connects back to Rey, right? It could have been Palpatine's like clone. So it's Palpatine. He cloned a version, like a Jedi, who was then eventually became Rey's mom, essentially, right? So now Rey is like half Palpatine, half clone.
I think there's always a theory that ties everything to Palpatine, you know.
So funny. It's got his fingers and everything, man.
I know. Right?
Rey's already half clone, right? Her dad was Palpatine's clone, correct?
That's true. But now I guess she's a purebred clone because both her parents are clones.
Yeah. Well, what I saw is like, I saw a lot of stuff like that. Like,
there's a lot of theories going around about what she could be and what her significance is, but. You know, it's funny.
She has the same haircut as Palpatine.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. It was the same exact hair.
Palpatine.
I think it's just like a coincidence, honestly. But I mean, her force sensitivity might be more of a thing. But that theory is pretty crazy too. I mean,
it makes sense that Palpatine would be maybe getting the Kaminoans to experiment with, like.
I think so too.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because if you flash forward from the point of this show, it's about 30 years later is when Mandalorian takes place. So it's not super far-fetched to think that, you know, that plot line has already started, because in Mando, like they are kind of insinuating these clone engineers are trying to do something with, you know, extracting midichlorians from the child and trying to do something with it, right? So.
Exactly. So it'd be a good lead-in for that. And so there's all these unfinished storylines of cloned Force-sensitive things. So it makes sense that they would stick to that. I think that does make a lot of sense.
Do you think they're going to get more involved with the rebellion, or they're going to stay on their like kind of job to job bounty hunter?
Keep getting screwed by Sid, who charges them more than
get paid for jobs. I have no idea. Here's another crazy theory of mine. I mean, this is a Dave Filoni show, right? Like the rest that are happening. Is it possible that we'll see the child at some point? Is it possible that we'll see Grogu?
I hope not. Feels too cameo-y to me. But I also
it's too soon. Like,
I also wouldn't rule it out.
To bring in a character that was like just created, you know, in another show. Yeah.
Right.
I kind of want to bring in like old characters we haven't seen in a while, maybe.
Yeah.
But I could see them doing something like that.
Or what like timing wise, it kind of makes sense to me. At least because in season 2, I think it was episode 5 or whatever it was. It was the Jedi episode where Ahsoka reveals his name. She fills in a little bit of his past and where he's been this whole time. She said that someone took him from the temple during the purge, and his memory goes dark after that, and he just remembers hardly anything. Right. So
it's because they put him in a box. He was in a box for
I mean, he had to have fed somehow, but I mean, to me, I'm thinking to myself, like, what were they thinking when first off they made the character? Like, did they have a storyline in place that will make sense later? And does the vagueness of that kind of, for now, this is what we're supposed to believe, is that he forgot what happened in the last, or maybe he's hiding what happened in his mind from her, right? To be able to decipher what that is, because he doesn't talk. So if that is the case, like, you know, what actually happened, and is there a plan in place to tell that story at some point? And if there is this the show to do it?
No.
Yeah, because when do you include Mark Grogu, like, in 100 years when he's an adult?
Right. I mean, like, when do you tell that story, or if it's ever going to be told, right? I mean, like, unless it's going to be another Maz Kanata thing, as like, this is a story for another time, and then it just, you know, it never happens, right? Yeah. So, you know, is it going to be another Luke's lightsaber lost kind of thing where we never find out what happens? But
I feel like it's going to end up being like a kid's short novel or something.
Yeah. Quite possibly. I mean,
this
is all speculation, right? So, I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but yeah, I mean, it could be anything like that for sure.
In regards to the main like overarching story, I would like to see them wrap up like the fate of Camino and like the decommissioning of the clones.
Yeah,
because,
that's a good one.
Yeah, because I think that is something that's very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it'll go along. I bet you it'll something will happen with Crosshair, and then Tarkin will be like, okay, clones suck. Like, we're shutting this thing down for good. And at some point, is this canon? Is there a Battle of Camino where the Empire comes in and like? Not
yet, but we talked about that a few times, thinking perhaps was this a part of the Omega theory? Blake, I forget if this was, because you mentioned it at some point that you thought that the Kaminoans would start breeding their own clones with a different host to try and make their own army to fight against the Empire or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because in the EU there was a clone on clone war where it was brother against brother, and it was because like basically the Empire did exactly what they did in canon here, which was they just like completely screwed over the Kaminoans by saying all your contracts are void, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And started to like repress them. And so they created their own army to fight back.
So that's kind of what I thought this might be leading to, because that's like that in Battlefront 2, right? That's that's the level where like you get to be the 501st, you're back on Camino, and you're just fighting all the clones that are like these subpar like clones that have, you know, that are just, they're kind of hard level, by the way. And then you get to, like, Boba Fett's there too. I'm like, how cool would that be?
Yeah, I hope they do that too. So like they hired him because Boba Fett knew it so well, right? Even though technically they all should, but
yeah. So I'm kind of like gunning for something like that, because I hope they don't just leave that, because that's like the overarching story, right? Like, we get like the character story, and we can still finish that with Crosshair and getting their chips removed and then finding out who Omega is. But with as far as the overarching story goes, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. I would say between Crosshair and that would be a really cool one to see. I would love to see what happens with when they start transitioning to the Stormtrooper uniform. I know it's supposed to happen pretty soon after, because it definitely happens by the time of Solo, which is 5 years later. Jedi Fallen Order, stuff like that. So again, we are in that time period, right?
In all the EU, it happens almost immediately, like within like 1 year, because there's lots of references to the clones complaining about how the new armor is really cheap compared to what they used to have.
Yeah. And there are clones that are still kept in commission, you know, the ones that aren't dead already. Like they do get the new uniform and have to use it. And there's a book that I think I read, and I think you read it as well. It came out a while ago. It's called Lords of the Sith. And a few of the royal guards that protect the Emperor are still clones. And at that point, I think that book is like 7 years or is either 4 or 7 years after episode 3. It's like somewhere around there. But yeah, like by that point, there's still some clones in these Imperial uniforms.
Do we know what happens to clones? Do they just die of old age normally, or is there in the EU, like Boba Fett gets very like he starts like degrading, right? It's almost like a
clone cancer. So you
because
cancer,
he doesn't get to the point where he's like 90 years old and he's like dying of old age. He's actually like 50 and he's just dying of like an illness, right? Do clones get to like that venerable age, or do they start degrading first?
We saw Rex make it there. We saw Rex make it there because he ages twice as fast as a normal guy, right?
Right.
And he made it all the way. Apparently, he's in Return of the Jedi now. So, I mean, it's like that's a 25 year later position in time. So, and he's a Gen 1 clone. So
50
I mean,
clone years.
Yeah.
So he's gonna be like what, like 70 years old, 80 years old?
He's like 70.
Dude's doing great.
Have you not looked into this, Bryce? There's pictures from like all the cast from on Andor. And there's like this old man, this fat old man with this huge white beard. It looks just exactly like what Rex looked like.
For sure, but do the years line up? Because does that look like an 80-year-old man to you?
Well, it's canon now because everyone basically like voted
bullied
for
them.
it.
Yeah,
he just ages well, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious about how
the cure.
Yeah, who knows? That's actually one thing. One thing I wanted to bring up actually before we wrap up here that I almost forgot to bring up was the chips. We know from Clone Wars that Ahsoka had to use the Force to help the technology in the medical center locate that chip in in Rex's head, right?
Yeah.
So I like how they subtly acknowledged that in this episode when Tech had to manufacture a little piece of hardware to recreate the aerial scan as to where Rex's chip was removed so that they could more accurately depict where they need to do the surgery, right? Yeah. Because that's what the missing piece was when Ahsoka just put him in the X-ray and it's like nothing came up because it's supposedly supposed to be part of their brain, right? Their brain tissue. And the chip is made of like organic tissue. So
it's too bad they didn't use this opportunity to have one of the characters develop a strange quirk due to the brain surgery.
Yeah,
who knows?
Wrecker becomes even more of a child.
Yeah.
their eyes blink at different times.
Yeah. Tech gets nerdier.
They could. I mean, they all haven't got it out yet, right? We haven't seen it.
Yeah. Who knows? All right, guys. Well, that's all I got. Unless any of you want to bring up something.
I had one more really big thing we should talk on, and that's that it was pointed out that Omega doesn't have a chip at all.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So, well, that's worth bringing up because that makes her even more interesting and unique.
It does. Yeah. There's a lot of peculiar things about that character for sure. Because she was also bred what seems to be just to be an assistant. Like I it's hard to buy that, you know?
Yeah, I don't buy it either.
Yeah, it's really hard to buy that. So
I almost think that she wasn't supposed to be part of the Republic. She was going to be Kaminoan property, like their own personal clone that they did their own experiment with.
Right. Yeah,
we've enhanced her with the most advanced administration techniques. She can do so many Excel spreadsheets.
So good. All right, guys. Actually, one thing I forgot. This episode finally confirms Rex as a Generation 1 clone trooper, which
I never confirmed before.
They never confirmed that before because the only time it ever came up was that Rex he talks about it at some point in Clone Wars. He brings up the fact that he was not part of the Battle of Geonosis, but he was around when that happened, right? So, I like that they pointed out that his actual like age is a Generation 1 clone trooper, like fresh off the line kind of thing. He just wasn't
Fresh off the line,
deployed to.
just too busy to go to Geno's.
Yeah, exactly. Just happens to be too busy.
His
to go to
alarm
Geno's.
didn't go off that morning. He slept through.
Yeah.
Sorry,
he
guys.
could have been left behind to protect Camino or whatever. Who knows, right?
Was that their excuse to why there's no 501st troopers seen on Genosis?
Well, on Genosis, that was before they even had designations, right? Yeah, they're all just white, and then they had the standard like green, yellow, red, like for the
Captain,
sergeants, commander and sergeants kind of thing. Yeah. So, and they had blue as well, but it didn't mean anything, I think, at that point. So, yeah, I mean, it's they quickly, when the Jedi became generals, they just quickly made like a new way of organizing, statuses and whatever else. I have no idea where he's been. I just thought it was a cool little thing that he brought up, or somebody brought it up, that Omega brought it up. She recognized him as, she just takes one look at the wrinkles in his face, and
she knows
like, you're a Generation 1 clone. Yeah.
Better than the clones themselves, which is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I got a question for you guys. So one of the last things between the Rex and Hunter conversation is like, if you run into trouble or whatever, give us a call. You know how to find us. If you're ever in a bind, you know how to reach us. So what trouble do you think Rex is going to be in when he gets the Bad Batch to help him?
I think, personally, it's when they're going to bring in Wolf and Gregor into the show.
That early?
Yeah.
I felt they would be like post-show.
Wolf and Gregor are other commanders?
They're the other two clones that we know survived up until the point of Rebels. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I actually don't know. Maybe it have something to do with bounty hunters. I don't know. I feel like they're going to keep wanting to tie into bounty hunter type things with all the media out.
Maybe Fennec will capture him and then hold him prisoner, so they'll show up. Who knows?
Who knows? But that's a good question, though.
He will be back.
He will be back for sure. Yeah, that's
no way they would say that and then not do it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. All right, fellas. Well, thanks for coming back on the show as always, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Sounds good. Thanks, Josh.
God bless.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming back on the show, Blake and Bryce. Round of applause, everyone, for them co-hosting this production. I could not do it alone, and it's always nice to have a secondary or third voice on the show, or even more when we have these big group sessions. It's always very fun to have everyone on, and we hope you guys are enjoying the show as well. According to stats, our last month in May was the highest month ever that we had people tuning into the show with, unless it was just because we dropped a ton of episodes last month and people were just listening to all of them. A massive thank you to all of you guys who have been sharing this show. It really does help with the algorithms, and we're finally seeing a bit of result with potentially just that. It might also be the hype around Bad Batch. I'm not entirely sure, but you know what? Thank you. A big, huge thank you to any one of you guys who has been dropping reviews, leaving those 5 stars, or sharing the show with a friend. It's been a huge help, and a massive thank you from both myself and our co-hosts on the show. Anyone in the Escape Pod, just a huge thank you to you guys for doing just that. So keep it up. I love doing this show, and we love to see the reward of people actually tuning in and listening to it. And if you guys can continuously helping us out by word of mouth, just chatting about it, feel free to tag us in your social media posts at SW Escape Podcast. Check out the description of the episode below for links on how to get in touch with us and leave a voicemail. And until then, we've got lots of content coming your way. So stay subscribed, ad-free to Star Wars Escape Pod, and we'll see you in the next one.